Okay, and we're back. If you guys are still here, D and Ogre, feel free to drop me a line. Ogre, I appreciate the follow. I don't stream very often, but when I do, it's usually a tutorial. I might do some video games from time to time. So if anything in the title interests you, feel free to drop in, man. Always interested in having people hang out. For those of you guys that are joining us, this is part 2 of the painting Tiamat stream that we're doing, the late night stream. We just finished off the heads of Tiamat, and now we are moving on to the rest of the body. The rest of the body, as I said before, this isn't really a Tiamat miniature. This is called the Dragon God from a Kickstarter that I did, and this is a 3D printed model, but it serves its purpose. It's 5 heads. As you can see, we spent a good portion focusing on her heads. The rest of the body should be relatively simple to do. And here we go. For this, because the model is so big, we are going to actually break out a new paint set paintbrushes that we've not used before. They're going to be comically large, because I was not paying attention on Amazon when I bought them. So this is my paintbrush, ironically made in China, and this is what I'm going to use to paint the body and the wings. The smaller ones, I'll be here all fucking night, right? So we're going to do the big ones because a lot of it's going to be just going over it. You'll notice that I did do a lot of this in red, and here is why. Tiamat is not a dragon. Tiamat, at least in 5th edition, is a fiend. Fiends have a different color scheme in my mind. In my mind, fiends are fire, fiends are red, fiends are dark. So what we're going to do, if you're looking at the reference picture that's been up for all of last stream and this one, her red fades into a dark red that eventually goes into a brown, wraps around the tail, ending in a black. We are going to try and recreate that effect, beginning with her red head from here, coming all the way to the back, and then continuing on. I don't have any notes for this, so I will be winging her body. It doesn't seem like it's going to be ultra difficult to do, so I didn't see a point in... I didn't really see a point in taking down notes. I have in my mindset what I want, and this is what we're going to go with. So I am going to take my dry brush. If you look, again, this is an old piece of crap brush that I've been using for years and years and years and years and years. It's probably about time to replace it, and I'm going to dry it off. If you're also seeing, this is my pupper. She says hello. She's wondering why it's late and we're not in bed yet. She does that all the time. Every once in a while, you might see her move her head, like, hey, get a move on. Let's get this done. She hasn't done it in a while, but she has done it. Trust me. All right, so we're going to start with the red. Now, I want to blend in some of this red as it's coming down, and I'm going to do it with a dry brush. So right off the bat, this is just red Krylon primer, the Color Master primer paint. That's all it is. Nothing special. Yes, I could have sat here and base coated this red, and I tell you what, I would have been irritated at the end of it because it's a large figurine. Try and use, if you're going to paint something, try and use the color of the model to primer it. If you're painting a green dragon, primer it in green paint. You know, it just makes sense. It'll save you time. Some people are purists and they don't like it, and that's fine. Everybody has their own. I prefer to save myself some time. This would have taken me an hour. Then I would have been waiting for it to dry, and I'm good. So, but we are going to turn her around, and we're going to focus on this back end because I want it to flare up a little bit. It is just basic red right now. I didn't even know basic red was a thing, right? So we are going to take some crimson, and this is off the Master's Touch. They sell them at Hobby Lobby. It's a wooden box that comes with all sorts of paints. Some of it's really, really cool. Great for acrylics. I use Vallejo. I use Citadel. I use whatever I have, and whatever I can get a hold of. Sometimes I can't always get a hold of the color that I want. Sometimes you gotta improvise, right? So I'm going to use crimson, Master's Touch Fine Art Studio acrylic, crimson. The code is SA250. That's 250. And the codes will make it easier to find the paints if you are watching this tutorial on YouTube or whatever, and you guys are looking for something to do, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to squeeze out a little bit and put it on my palette. Now I am going to take that crimson red, because it's pretty much the same color, it's just a slightly different shade, and I'm going to shake up and I'm going to do orange fire. And I'm going to shake, 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 do 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 do, shake, 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 do 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 do, shake that paintbrush, do do. No, that didn't work at all, did it? I'm going to put 2 drops of crimson fire with that little bit of crimson, or not crimson, orange fire with that little bit of crimson that I did. Beautiful. Make sure that's tightened up, and I'm going to mix them together. This is going to give me a nice, decent orangey red. That is significantly different than the rest of the model, right? And I'm going to take that and I'm going to wipe it off on this towel to get a lot of it off it, and then I'm going to just run it kind of like a dry brush, but it's really an overbrush because I'm getting rid of a lot of it. And now once I get a lot of that pigment off of the brush, now I'm going to highlight her back scales coming down the back end. And it's just a dry brush. It's not meant to do anything except blend in some of that black that bled, some of that blue that bled, and some of that green that bled on the back of those wings. So if you look right here, you see where some of the colors bled down a little bit, where I didn't quite blend them. This dry brush is simply meant to help blend that back together, so that you don't have those hard lines of green and red. That's all it's meant to do, is to just blend a lot of it back together. See how that is all, yeah. So grab it, and we're just going to go through and we're just going to dry brush, just to get a lot of these colors blended a little nicer than when we were painting them through. So we don't have those hard lines. See, when by hard lines, you see where that black meets right there? That is a hard line. We don't want those hard lines. We want to blend them. So that's why we're dry brushing. Just trying to blend, and we're not going to go high up. We're not going to spend a super long time on it, but we do want to kind of just blend it in a little bit more. Blend it back into the red that we primered. We're going to do the same for the back end. And using a messed up brush like the one that I typically use for my dry brushing, I can ensure that I get a nice little feathery appeal to it, and it catches and then it moves on. So if anybody's in the chat, say hello. My name is Isaac, and we are doing part 2 of Tiamat, or Tiamat's color scheme, based off of a mini that I 3D printed from a Kickstarter that I just did. And now that we've got that taken care of, and we got that dry brush to kind of blend those colors back in, I'm going to take some more of the crimson, add it to that palette. Add it to that palette of that orange fire that I mixed up. And we're going to do an overbrush. And what an overbrush is it's essentially a wet dry brush. You're not going to completely get rid of all the pigment. You're going to leave it, and you're just going to go over it. And we're going to go over the same areas that we did our dry brush on. Again, we're just going to try and blend things back together. Stay away from the actual necks, stay away from the heads. The goal is to do these fringe edges right here and get everything back. It's okay if you don't get everything. it's actually preferable that you don't get everything, because you're going for a blend kind of a, you're just blending it, right? You want a little bit of bleed is fine. And like that. And actually, when we're done with this, we're probably going to dry brush some crimson or some orange fire onto her face to kind of bring those details out a little bit. But that will be at the end. And that's it. Voila. Done. Just plain. No. So, it does go from a redhead and fade into a brown and then into a black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that messed up brush that I have, dry it up, but I'm not going to get rid of all the red. I'm going to take some brown. Now, this isn't a true brown. This is a raw umber. It's a dark brown. This is Master's Touch Acrylic Raw Umber SA540. I use this one a lot. It is an extremely dark. It goes on really, really smooth. I normally don't water down my paints, but in this one I do, because I want to stretch it out a little bit longer and I don't want it super thick. I'm not trying to do a base coat. I'm not trying to do anything except catch the edges beginning from the neck down. So red, brown, and from here I want to start, going out this way under the wing, and I want to start fading it into a lighter reddish brown, right? So it is dark. It is going to be super dark, and if you're heavy-handed, you want a lighter touch because it's super dark, and you're going to see that it's super dark. So I mixed it. I'm going to wipe off a lot of the excess paint because it is super dark, and I'm going to dip it back in, just the tip, get rid of a lot of that excess, and now I'm going to start fanning it out over the miniature. And I'm going to go against the grain. And the reason for that being is, again, I'm not trying to do another base coat. Base coating it in this raw umber defeats the purpose of what I was doing when I primered it in red. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to dirty the red. That's probably a good way to describe it. I just want to dirty the red. And if you do it against the grain, it'll catch on those edges, leaving a red underneath it, which is exactly what I want. And too thick. That last one I did was too thick, and I can already see it, but that's fine because it's going to get darker as it continues on. So light, and then probably light towards the edges, but it's probably going to get darkest towards right here. So right here on this middle area on this wing is where it's probably going to be the darkest. So feather out, light, feather out, light, feather out, light, and then start darkening towards the middle. Not super dark, but darkening. Again, we're just trying to dirty the red. And there's a reason why we're dirtying the red. Because we're going to go over it with a black wash a little bit later, and it's going to have a real neat Firescape of Hell effect. And you also want to get these bones. We're going to end up actually painting those bones black, or those nails, or those claws, or whatever you call them. We're actually going to end up painting those black, but we definitely want to get that so that there's not just a huge red gap in your paint. We want to make it even. Again, we're not blackening it. We're not base coating it. We are simply dirtying the red. And I found that if you fan it out, it'll make it a little bit easier to accomplish that goal. So I picked the claw and I fanned out, picked the claw, fanned out, picked a point on the wing, fanned out. Pick a point, fan out. Against the grain. We're just dirtying it. There, you see? So we took it and we just added some brown. You can still definitely see the red, but you can definitely see how it's not all brown. It's just dirty. It's just a dirty, dirty, dirty red. Tiamat's been living in the 9 hells for the last few thousand, 100 years. So her wings are going to be covered in soot and sulfur. And that is how I am justifying what we are doing. Now I'm going to do the other wing. And this is going to require some manipulation. By this point, the head should be dry, so if you accidentally touch them, it's okay. Just, there's no reason to get anywhere near the heads for this part, so you shouldn't really worry about getting paint on them. The white one is the one that's probably going to show it the most if you make a mistake, for obvious reasons. So we're dirtying, we're dirtying, we're dirtying. We're dirtying, we're dirtying, we're dirtying. And that was a little too much. It's fine. We're dirtying. We're dirtying. We're dirtying. And we are out. So we're going to grab some more raw umber. And we're just going to keep going. And what we're going to do is we are going to do the entire model. Underneath the wings, everything is going to be coated. No, take it back. We're not going to do the underwings. The underwings are going to stay the same. But we are going to do it everywhere else. And the reason for that being is that membranes on bats, or whatever. I saw a tutorial where some membranes on bats were different colors. And if you do some study and you want realistic, then yeah, you know, they are different colors. I'm not going to get into the science of all that. It's not my idea. It's somebody else's idea. But I do want to show a significant difference between the membranes and the rough edges of the figure. So, pick her back up. Be careful where you touch her. Be careful where you touch her. I feel like that's a... I feel like that's just life lessons right there. Just dirtying the wing. Got a little heavy-handed on my second batch. I didn't water it down enough, I can already tell, but I'm not too worried about it. It doesn't have to be perfect because when was the last time you saw dirt evenly distributed? And I don't mean like, you know, dust layers. I mean, when was the last time you saw evenly distributed grime? Pick a point and feather out. Pick a point, feather out. Pick a point, feather out. Pick a point, feather out. Rinse and repeat. I left the red on her neck red. I left the red at the base of the wings red. And going down her spine is red, but I am going to start going towards the tail. Now, I'm only going to do part of the tail in that dirty brown. And I'll tell you why. Because we are going to fade that part of her body and that tail into black. As soon as it goes underneath the wing where it disappears right there, we are going to start fading it into a black, and we'll start getting a little bit heavier on the paint. And that point we are not base coating, or we are not dirtying it. We are nearly, not completely, but nearly base coating it. So I gotta turn her. Careful where you grab her. Now you can see these membranes right here. You can see these membranes right here. We're not gonna touch those. They got a leathery appearance, and I want to leave that appearance leathery. But up here on the wings, we can, where the scales are, we can definitely dirty those up. So definitely along the wings and the edges. But right here, we want to leave those leathery bits. Our body. This is where it's going to get interesting. So I'm going to dirty it out just right here where these wings underneath kind of catch. And then stop. Then I'm going to come over here to where those wings kind of catch and start forming where the bones and the armor of the wing right here, this muscle tissue right here, begins to go towards the wing where it catches and joins, and then stop. And now I'm going to move over into the chest, doing the same thing. Haven't changed anything, and we're just dirtying the body now. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be even, just has to be enough to take notice. And again, the goal here is to just so that it's not so red. You don't want to get rid of the red. You just want to make it so that it's not so red. Because that's not so Raven. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough. So for those of you in my chat, we are finishing off Tiamat because this was watered down acrylic and because it is so hot in Vegas. Right now, these paints are not taking a long time to dry. And that's it. We're good. Now, we got that raw umber. We're done with it. Now we're going to go with black. And we're going to add it actually to whatever's left over in the raw umber. And this is just black acrylic SA460. Master's Touch. Add some water. And we're going to mix that black in with that brown. That watered down brown that we were using, now we're mixing black into it. It's not really for any purpose other than I just didn't want to waste whatever brown was left. I mean, brown and black is still black. But I do need, but I didn't want to waste what was ever left. There wasn't much anyway. So I'm going to take this, wipe off all the excess. And instead of focusing on the wings, this is going to be just the tail from here coming all the way around. And I'm going to get more heavy-handed, so it's going to be light. As a matter of fact, I'll probably start here and work my way out so that as the pigment is running off of the brush, it becomes a little less even. Or it becomes a little less, a little more of an overbrush and a little less of a base coat. Because I want that tail spike to be black. Black, blacker than my soul. I don't have a black soul. If I did, I'd feel better about being a bad person. I'm not a bad person. Try to be, but I'm not a bad person. And see how as you begin losing pigment, it begins to fade, and it's easier to get that feathery blend effect because all the pigment was used on the end. Fantastic. Now it's not going to be 100%. At some point you're still going to have to go back and do an overbrush to kind of blend it a little bit more on your own. But it's still better than just straight black. And it doesn't really matter to me if it's all black as it works its way up the tail, or if it's some red, because, to be quite fair, I don't want to cover up all the red, but I do want to cover up most of the red on the tail spike. Not all of it, but just most of it. You can leave some. It's not going to be a huge issue because we are going to go over it with a wash later, and that's going to take care of that. Alright, gotta grab her from another spot, and we're gonna take whatever's left of the black. We're gonna go over some of that brown. Not all of it, we're just gonna go over where the, see where these little bony muscles come out, where they stretches between the wings. I'm gonna do that in black. And it doesn't have to be a full black, I just want to make sure it's got a pronounced area. Now, one warning, a word of caution, when you water down your paints like that, it does go a little bit longer. It takes longer to dry, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, but it also makes it harder to dry brush. Dry brushing with watered down paints is a little bit more difficult. Not impossible, mind you, but difficult. Alright, so you can see now that there are some pronounced ridges now on our wings. I did want to get those a little bit more pronounced. I'm going to do the spikes on the ends of her wings that you can see right here. I am going to do those in black. They're not all going to be in black, because if you saw underneath the wing, they were in brown, but I do want to do those particular ones in black. I feel like those and her claws should be black. So let me grab it from another spot so I don't get black paint on my white head. And I feel like this is probably going to be a significantly shorter stream than the last one, even though I'm painting more of the body. The head required intricate work. I essentially painted all the chromatic dragons on just those heads because I used all of the techniques that I had learned and researched simply to do her heads. And I mean, let's be honest, when you're looking at Tiamat directly, you're looking... Her wings are massive, but you're not concerned about her wings. You're concerned about the 5 faces staring at you from the, not the abyss, from the 9 hells. So for those of you that are in the room, say hello. If I lost people that were in here earlier, I apologize. I did end the stream and restart it just because I wanted to have a simple way of adding this to YouTube without having to go in and do a lot of heavy editing in terms of breaking the stream apart. I guess it wouldn't have been difficult to do, but at 10:45 at night, Feeling just a tad bit lazy, right? All right, so here we are. We got our black spikes. Our black spikes are actually really nice. I may do all our spikes black. I wasn't really feeling it. I was gonna go with like a bone for the ones that were inside, but against the red, it actually is coming out really nice, and I'm feeling the black. We're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna do the black, and just keep it very, very simple. Wings this big are extremely easy to paint. Welcome back, Ogre. 10:45, right? Who needs sleep? I think D went to bed. I know she's got work in the morning. I got work in the morning too, but I want to get this done, so who knows when I'll go to bed. How's your character creation coming along? Careful where I grab it so I don't get unnecessary paint anywhere else. I could always touch it up, but I would much rather prefer to not undo all the work that we just did in the last stream. Alright, so picking out spells. Yeah, so many choices, right? So there, I have the black. As you can see, I got the black spikes on the wings. I am liking the black spikes on the wings, so I'll probably end up keeping that motif with those black spikes. I was going to do the bone, but the black spikes are actually coming out really well. It's a contrast that I wasn't expecting, to be honest. Of course, it doesn't help that I'm getting paint all over my hands because I keep rotating this model and the paint's not finishing. That's why I'm being very careful not to touch any of the heads, just the body and the neck. Again, when you water down your paint, it takes longer to dry. So what I could do is, and this is just me brainstorming right now, I could choose to do these spikes in black, the ones on the outer wings, and then do the bone color on the ones underneath the wing. That would definitely set it apart from set those bones apart from the other bones. What do you think? You think that might be a little more dangerous? As a matter of fact, we're going to get a little intricate on this as well. So I'm going to place her on her back. The membranes. Now, if I was going to do that, then I was better off going beige on that. Down her belly, on her tail. A bone white. And then I could do the membranes. I'll be right back. I'm actually going to... Oh, I was saying what would be more dangerous. So right now I got the base coat down of what I want to do. I dirtied the wings a little bit, but underneath here, it's got this leathery texture that I enjoy with the red. But I'm debating on whether or not to make this membrane part of these wings this beige color that I did on the underbelly, and I'm wondering if it would look better with the two-tone than just the one. It wouldn't be difficult to achieve. I just don't know if it would look right. I did paint a gargantuan red dragon not too long ago. I'm gonna go grab it and see if I can make a decision as to what I want to do. Obviously, doing a two-tone underwing creates more work. So here is the gargantuan that I painted not too long ago. But I'm actually looking at this, and the underwing itself, either of them it doesn't have that on the membrane. It's just the red, and I actually like that a little bit more than what I'm seeing on that reference photo. I know what I'm gonna do. Okay. Less is more in almost all things, so I'm gonna keep it simple. Like most things, I mean, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it simple. I start getting fancy, and if I don't like it, then I've just wasted a whole little bit not a whole bunch of time, but I have an idea of what I wanted it to look like. I'm going to go with that idea, and if that idea doesn't work, then I can always complicate it later. Undoing a complicated paint is going to be a lot harder than complicating a simple paint. So I am going to keep it simple. And I know exactly what I'm going to do. Where is my trusty number 3? I am missing a paintbrush. There's my trusty number 3. I'm actually... Oh. Oh. That paintbrush is going to be dead because I didn't put it back into the water, and I'm sure it's dried, but I know exactly what I'm going to do. So I need some more sepia shade. We're going to go back and we're going to do sepia shade. Or go back, we're going to do sepia shade on the red neck. It's fine. It's not going to be a huge loss. Probably cost me maybe 15-20 minutes. Not a big deal. Really, really not a big deal. But the sepia shade will help that red neck blend in a little bit more with the rest of the shades. It was a sharp contrast, not a huge issue. But it also allows me to work with some other washes that I'm thinking about employing at this point. Using my trusty number 3 for this was probably not the best idea. There were better brushes for wide strokes of sepia shade, but that's okay. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all. So we sepia shaded the red neck, and now we're going to go through and we're going to sepia shade not the white neck, but the point of where the white neck meets the red body, and we're doing that to blend it in, just to help blend it a little bit more, because we did have a hard white line and we want to get rid of that. Don't want to undo it, we just want to blend it. And at least with the sepia shade we can definitely do so. Alright, so we're going to shade it, and we're actually going to take a lot of that leftover sepia shade where the necks, and we're going to run it along the areas of the ridges where the necks meet the actual body, just to help blend those in a little bit more. It's not super necessary, but I find that that's probably going to be easier to work with. Now here is where it's going to get interesting for me, because I am going to go through a ton of black wash. Again, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it super simple, and we are going to coat this entire model, with the exception of the heads, in black wash. That's what this comically large Amazon made from China #6 brush is for. It is for me to coat this entire model in a black wash. And I'm going to show you why. Because I'm going for this effect. You see how that's dirty and red? But since we pre-dirtied it with brown anyway, that wash is going to react with that brown to bring it even darker. And that's going to achieve that red into brown into black fade that you see in that reference photo. At least that's what we're hoping. So the body, again, is not tough. We're going to spend most of our time doing the fine details after we wash it. But let's get this wash into play. Washes are nice. With this big brush, it's actually a little bit easier for me to brush it onto where I need it to go. And you're going to need a ton of it. You're going to need a lot of it. Because we want it to sit in those recesses. We want it to pull. We want it to definitely shadow. So I'm going to move my palette over because I keep hitting the mic with the paintbrush because it is so comically large. With my clown brush. And we are just going to dab it and then spread it around. Dab it and then spread it around. Because we're going for a just out of the 9 hells fire and brimstone smoke effect with this red and brown and black shade. And in the end, this red that's up here will probably end up washing that in red to help blend that in with the other colors. But I haven't decided on that yet. We will make a decision when we get to that point. Yeah, I need more black wash. I don't need to cap it. I am mumbling to myself at this point. I apologize. So if you can't hear me or if you think that you're missing something, let me know. The black wash that we're using is just your typical black wash from Vallejo. It is 73201 is the code for those of you that are looking for it. And the sepia shade that we did earlier is your typical sepia shade from Vallejo, and that is code 73200. Now, when you're coating this model, or when you're coating with the sepia, or not the sepia, with the black wash, you're going to look at it and it's going to be dark and you're going to think, holy crap. It does not dry. These washes, they dry dark, but they don't dry as dark as they look when they're wet. They just don't. They pull, they recess, they recede, and they go back, and they're meant to hide in the crevices, the cracks, the pieces. They're meant to shadow some of these lines. I actually am discovering, as where I'm doing this, that a lot of those lines I was trying to hide from when I assembled the model, and I didn't quite line up those seams correctly. They're becoming a little more pronounced because the wash is settling inside them, but that's okay. It's not a huge issue. I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over the fact that I have seam lines on a model that consisted of shit, 35 to 40 pieces. A couple of seam lines is going to be just fine with me. I am not going to fret it. Um, so, Ogre, tell me about this campaign that you guys are running. What is it about? Is it a module? You said it was a homebrew. Um, what's the premise? What's the goal? So we are still shading. This whole time I went through quite a lot of black wash, and you're going to go through it on something this big. There's just no way around it. I do have 2 bottles of it just in case. I don't anticipate I'm going to need nearly that much, but the black wash that I am currently using has been used on a lot of other projects, and it could very well run out on me, which is what the second bottle's for, just in case. Alright, so we got that done. I'm not going to do her body yet because I still need to be able to get into her wing at the moment. But it did achieve that burnt fiery effect that I was looking for. Once it dries, that's going to be fantastic. It looks a little darker on the camera than it does in the light. So let me rotate my hand around. Put my hands in a way that's not blatantly on her neck because I know my fingers have black paint on it. And we're going to do the other wing now. And again, all we're doing is we're just doing a black wash to get it into the recesses. Probably going to end up going over those points again on the wings with the black because I do see at least one point that I missed, and I do want those points to be black because they're supposed to be black. Again, I know it's going to dry dark, and because I went over with that brown and that black on those edges along the wing where the bones hide underneath the skin and the scales, I know those are going to be blacker than normal, but I wanted them to be. I wanted them to be a little more pronounced. Because that's what they're there for. They're hiding underneath a thin layer of scales and skin to that's stretched out, right? So I wanted them pronounced. I probably could have gone with a lighter shade. Maybe I'll even do a little bit of a dry brush on them to kind of kill some of that blackness. But we're doing all right. So I'm just coming down here. I'm moving around some of this wash that's settling in some weird spots. For those of you that are still in the room, I do paint from time to time. I do offer some tutorials on painting. I kind of like just hanging out and painting while I'm, or hanging out or painting or hanging out while I'm painting. You know, it's different. If you can hear some music, usually I have classical music playing in the background. I know it's a little generic. Have classical music, painting, artist, ha ha, har. It's relaxing to me. I enjoy it. So I normally announce on my Twitter when I'm going to be online, and I normally announce what I'm going to be doing when I'm online. So that if it interests you, then you're more than welcome to join. If it doesn't, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Not everything I do is for everyone, but I do a little bit of everything. And again, we're going to go through. And we're going to blend in some of this green and this blue on this red back. And we're adding some wash to this tail that we painted with the dark brown. We're just going to let it recess and let it kind of just hang out in there. We are going to, once it dries, and again, because like I said, it is hot in Vegas, so the wash isn't taking nearly as long to dry as it should, or as it normally does, I should say. Normally it does take a while, but it's not. It's not it's not an issue tonight. That being said, it's also very hot in my room. I have my I don't have the air running because you can imagine that doing so in Vegas means that your electric bill is going to be extremely high. But I also got my laptop up with my notes, and I got my gaming computer running, my streaming computer running. So that also generates its own source of heat. So I'm making do with what I got. Once the wings dry, then I can move on to the body underneath her. And there we go. We're getting a really, really, really cool. I'm going to put her down. I'm getting a really, really, really cool fiendish devil effect going on here. Ogre says the premise of the campaign is that the party is trying to uproot an empire. Now, I'm not going to read it all out so that nobody's stealing it, but yeah, just give you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about next. Okay. So, what happens after, if the premise is to uproot the empire, what happens at the end when and if that empire gets uprooted? Do you guys take over and become the new nobles? Is that the goal? So we are going through, and we are just pretty much, like I said, not base coating, but we are washing this entire model in this black wash. Because I'm going for a specific effect here. I'm going to get the feet. Make sure I get the feet while I'm here. Now, the thing is that if you're going to do the wash, you got to make sure you do a particular area all at once with that wash, especially on the lighter ones like sepia shade, because once it dries and you go over it again, it darkens that shade, and then you end up with two different shades of that wash, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to fix. So black wash isn't so bad, other than it's going to be black on black, and since it rests in the recess and you can never get it in the same recess twice, it can be a little problematic if you let it dry and then do a second coat. When you're just second coating a wash, just like paint, it just darkens it overall, right? So the goal here is to yes, fantastic. Premise here is to, again, we're going for that darkening effect. It's actually coming out really nice. So I think I can probably grab it from this end now. It's still a little wet, it's a little tacky. But grabbing it from where I'm grabbing it on the edges, not an issue. And now I'm going to blackwash the underwing. And we'll probably end up going over the entire model with a dry brush of some red highlights. And just to kill some of this darkness that we brought into this figure, because she is a fiend and she is out of the 9 hells, but she doesn't have to look like a filthy cheap. I don't know how to make that joke without sounding like a dick, so I'm just gonna leave that one alone. And again, you just want to be generous with it. Let it pull. On the flatter areas, you can probably move it around a little bit. We are going to go back and we're going to do all of her spikes, not of her spikes, the spikes on her head are fine, but we are going to do all of her spikes in black, I think. The black's going to look nice. We'll wait until after we dry brush, and then we may go back into... We may actually do sepia. I know that I keep flip-flopping on that. We'll see how the black looks, and if it doesn't come out right, I can always go over it with bone white sepia and reshade it. Ogre says it's his first time playing with the group, so he's not quite sure what the overall goal is of the adventuring party, I guess, which is fine. I mean, if you knew the ending of the story, then why play, right? I do know people that like knowing the end of the story, and that's why they prefer pre-made modules. When I DM, even though I do a lot of pre-made modules, I like them. Some of them are really well written, some of them are not so much, and you got to do some prep work to get them to work. But I also do change a lot of the module so that if people have read ahead and read them, they are still pleasantly surprised. You know, they may know how it ends, or they may know what's supposed to happen next, but just because you fight an adult blue dragon doesn't necessarily mean that the adult blue dragon in his cave doesn't have any young dragon offspring. Caught a couple of my players off guard with that one. They had skipped ahead, and I found out they had skipped ahead, so I changed it up just enough, not to teach them a lesson, but just enough to where they were surprised and they realized, skipping ahead and reading and knowing how it's going to work doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to work. Especially if I find out that you're doing that. Because what's the fun in that, right? I give you a puzzle, you skip ahead and you know the answer, well, then it wasn't much of a puzzle, right? Also, one of the reasons that I don't do a lot of puzzles in the book that are in the modules. I'll create my own riddles, my own puzzles. Some of them will be super easy. Let's be honest, I'm not a genius. Some of them are actually pretty tricky. I have found that a lot of the things that I do that are meant to be easy will sometimes vex them. The simplest solutions will sometimes just completely throw them off guard. And some of the ones that I expect to be difficult are difficult. Ogre, with your character creation, how did you guys do stats? Are you guys doing point buy, rolling? What are y'all doing? A lot of people have a lot of different ways of generating stats and, for their PCs. I was always a fan of rolling, but for some very odd reason, whenever I do rolling, I always end up with a number of players, not a few, but a number of players that show up, and it's the age-old joke, huh? I rolled these stats at home. 4d6s re-roll once. That's essentially what we do too. Um, I started going to a point buy for characters that were being remade only because some players I trusted and that those were legitimate roles, and some players just had these ungodly stats. I have one player in my group who at level 12 managed to get himself to 20 wisdom, 20 dexterity, 18 intelligence, and all of these were rolled at home. So I don't do that anymore. I also don't like the inflexibility of point buy. Um, Point buy is great, but the same players that will roll those amazing stats at home will also point buy the system and game it to the point to where they've dumped stuff something like intelligent, but you dump your intelligence because you're not playing an intelligence based character. Problem with that being is that unless you're playing a dumb intelligence, you're still sitting there figuring out puzzles that are way beyond your character's ability to comprehend because your character has a 8 intelligence. How does he figure out those puzzles? Because the player's not dumb. So playing down intelligence is difficult. So point buy, I found, was not the end all be all answer either. Simply because I am not a fan of dump stats. So rerolls were problematic. So to recap, rerolls were problematic with this particular group because I could never get them to roll in front of me, and I didn't. I just couldn't. It was an issue. Point buy was out because they were gaming the. And I don't want to say, I'm not talking trash as if they're bad. They're maximizing their assets, is how I should phrase it. But they were definitely gaming the point buy system. So the way that I found to make that work tends to suck. level 8 with 33. That's crazy. The way I solved it that was best was not to do a point buy, but to go back to rolling for stats. Moving forward, and it's very cool because we have 6 players in our group. In our standard core group, there are 6 players. There are what 6 sets of stats, right? You got off the top of my head, you have strength, dex, con, whiz, intelligence, charisma. So off the top of my head, you've got 6 sets of stats to work with. So I have 6 players. So session 0, moving forward, there will always be a session 0, and this is very tacky. So tacky as in it just feels sticky because the stuff's drying. I know I'm switching gears really fast here, but I got 6 players, right? I got 6 stats. So what I am going to do moving forward for our next game, our session 0, we're going to build characters. Session 0 in front of me. We are not going to roll individual stats. When you roll individual stats, oh Jesus, Ogre says that he had 33 HP as a fighter with the con mod already added. Ouch, dude. Ouch. Here's what we're doing. So, with the group that I'm running, I'm taking a break to talk a little bit about this, because everybody has their own different system, right? And I gotta let this tackiness dry, because it is tacky in terms of sticky, and I need the stickiness to go away. So, here's how I plan to do rerolls with my current group. Session 0, we're all at the table, starting from the left-hand side. Player 1, 46, reroll 1, 46, subtract the lowest, reroll ones. And let's say you roll it, and the first person on the board is the first number on the board is a 16. 16 is on the board. Everybody can use that 16, put it anywhere they want. Second player, reroll 46, drop the lowest, reroll ones. Let's say it's a 12. Everybody has use of that 12, put it anywhere you want in your array. And we just go down the line. So every player has a direct hand in what they're rolling. and everybody's working with the same amount of stats. So if there is an 8, then everybody has a dump stat, right? If there is an 18, everybody has an 18. I found that this is the best way to keep them engaged and that they're all directly in charge of their own fate. But I also get to see those rolls firsthand. And like I said, sometimes you have players that are very trustworthy with rolling dice at home. Sometimes they're not. And I found that, one character had 86 hit points before their first 86 total attribute points before their first ability score increase at level 4. Meaning that if you took their strength, their con, their dex, all 6 of them, and added all those numbers together, it was at 86 total points. Somebody else, same thing, was at 63. So you had a high and a low. Naturally, that created an issue where some characters were just better than others. If everybody has the same stuff, the same array, they're fine. It eliminates me giving them an array to work with. And they all have a hand, and it's just a little bit better overall to where everyone has the same, not the same goals, but everyone is the same stats to work with. I'm letting this dry. It actually is coming out pretty nice. It's got that dirty, fiendish look to it. I know that you guys can probably see it from your end. You can see the wings right here where the bone underneath them definitely highlighted and out. I'm going to turn her because she is a little sticky while the wash dries. But I'm going to turn her so she's facing the camera so you can see her from the front end. You can see the white still is a little off-putting because I didn't blend that in very well. That's not a problem. I'm going to go over it a little bit later with a red wash. Not all of it, mind you, just where it blends into the chest to kind of tone it down so I don't have that hard line. Because right now I have a hard line. But if I pick her up and bring her a little closer to the camera, you can see her fiendish nature. The black wash with the red actually does immensely tone down the red Krylon primer. I am going to go over it again with a dry brush, but for the most part we are pretty much not done, but we're getting really close to having this miniature, and I say miniature in the loosest sense of the word because she's pretty big, figure, avatar, whatever you want to call it. We are pretty close to being done. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to show you guys the matte coating process because it's really simple. Some people will hand brush a clear coat over it, matte, gloss, satin, or whatever. I don't. I found that a lot of the times with the brushes, it'll pull in certain areas and it'll just white and become like this just white gunky mess, and I've ruined many a figurine with that by not spreading it out. What I do is I just take the Krylon matte spray and just go over it with that. One pass back, one pass front, left and right, flip it over. One pass is usually enough to get it to where I need it. If you need an example, I did a Krylon matte coat on that gargantuan that I have there that I'm showing you guys, and it turned out really well. So just to give you an idea, some people don't like it. I can certainly understand why. I personally think it's just fine. So how's that? You said you were picking spells. What's your favorite spell, Ogre? If you're going with the spellcaster, if you could have any spell at level 1, and it doesn't matter spell slots. I'm not talking about your favorite level 1 spell. I'm talking about if you could have a single spell at level 1, spell slot 1 through 8. What would that spell be? What is your bread or butter? It's a Maxiture, right? It's freaking enormous, man. It's freaking enormous. This is going to be amazing on the table. It really is. We're dry brushing. We're in the process of getting ready to dry brush. So, for the most part, it is dry. I'll probably give it a couple more minutes before I start going over it again. I'm going to start dry brushing some of the areas. Oh, no, it's pretty dry. It's pretty dry. So I'm going to start dry brushing some of the areas to kind of bring out some of these highlights that I lost when I did the black wash. The goal was to darken the color and tone the red down, but it wasn't to completely kill the red. So I'm going to pull out my Scarlet. Scarlet is probably the closest to the Krylon red that I had before. I'm going to put that onto my palette, but I'm also going to, and I'm going to put a lot more than I need, or that I think I'll need, but I'm also going to just we're just dry brushing the back end. So we're a light hand, and we're going against the grain, just to bring out, catch these edges of these ridges, and just add some red back into it. So I asked earlier what Ogre's Bread and Butter spell was, if you could have anything at level 1. And I don't know if I have a specific spell that I would have at level 1, but I can tell you what spell that I would not want at level 1, because it's just so dangerous. Wish. And let me tell you why. It's not because the spell itself is dangerous, it's because I have never met a DM that did not take that wish spell, and no matter how carefully you worded it, no matter how carefully you constructed it, I have yet to meet a DM that could not twist it and change it into something else. It's insane. I too also take a very perverse pleasure in taking a certain meaning and twisting it to something else. It's just a DM thing. Now, I'm not saying you need to be an outright jerk about it, but, you know, the wish spell, something that powerful, unless it's being used to create or recreate an existing spell, something that powerful should always, at least, I want to say almost always have repercussions. That's just me, though. Some people don't agree with that train of thought. Everybody has their own thoughts on that, but I just think that, hey, if you're going to sit there and wish, I don't know, for a castle, well, you'll get your castle. You're gonna have to clean it out, and it's gonna be infested with all sorts of nasty, creepy crawlies and creatures. But you'll get your castle. Or, oh, you'll get your castle, but you got to defeat the Tarrasque that is guarding it. You'll get your castle. That's just my 2 cents on it, though. And at level 1, it's just that is right up there with the deck of many things. I don't own one. I probably will never buy one. If you want a balanced game, some people enjoy it, some people like it. I think Critical Role did something with it. I think that's how Grog disappeared or whatever. I don't really follow Critical Role, but I know bits and pieces, and the deck of many things is just dangerous. It can be a lot of fun. It creates a very unbalanced party, and for new DMs, people just starting out for the first time, it just overcomplicates something so much that you just can't help it. It's so hard to get back on track unless you have an experienced hand on how to deal with some of those things that come up. So right now what I'm doing is I'm not handling the model because I'm letting it dry, but I am taking some Scarlet and I'm going back over the black wash that I did, and I'm just doing a dry brush. Just a dry brush and trying to add some of that red color back in. And that's why I'm going against the grain. And I'm focusing a lot, as you can tell, on those spine bones underneath. They did go a little darker than I wanted them to. They're not horrible, but I do want to add some color back into them to kind of lighten it up. I lighten them up a little bit. They were a little dark. They were a tiny, tiny bit too dark for my taste. And unfortunately, like I said, I was hoping that a lot of these layer lines would go, but um, the next time I assemble a model like this, I'm going to take extra care to get these assembly seams hidden correctly. My fault. My first time assembling a miniature that was not painted or that was not printed in one piece. Part of that is using the right glue, which I did not have, nor did I feel the need to go buy because I wanted to make what I had work. It is what it is. Lots of excuses. Point is that I just didn't do a good job. The model itself looks fine, but I'm being overly critical of my own work because that's what we all do it, right? We all make a mistake and we sit there and we examine it. Never mind that the model looks great, I'm just concerned about these seam lines that are mocking me at this point in time. Alright, so I'm done with the back end of that wing. Again, it's just a dry brush. I'm going to open up my Scarlet and get some more. And I'm going to start on the other wing to try and even out some of those highlights and lowlights that I accidentally added in. I did go a little heavy-handed with that brown black mixture that I did earlier. My fault. But it's easily correctable with some red dry brushing. Easily correctable. Just gotta fade it in a little bit more and we'll be alright. So, dry brushing some red back into these black seams, or these black spines. They're not really spines. I guess it is a spine. I mean, wingspans, wing spines. I guess they're not. Well, I guess it would be wing spines or spines, because the things coming out the other end are spikes. I mean, they function like a spine, right? It's not the spine going down the back, but it's definitely functioning like a spine on the wing. If anybody knows what the actual name of that is, let me know. I don't know what that name is, and I need to move the mic a little closer. Not that closer, but closer. All right. So, I don't feel the need. I don't know what the underside looks like, but I want to say that the underside is probably not as dark as the upper side, only because I didn't do brown on the underwing. So I don't really think I'm going to need to go back and dry brush the bottom of this miniature, but we will find out in a minute when I am finished doing so. Yeah, see, that came out real nice, and now it evened out a little bit, so I need to turn her so she's facing me so I can get underneath that tail right there. Let's see. Ogre says he hasn't played too much of Wizard. He says he mostly played Cleric. Harm is his go-to for Cleric. Harm is definitely a good spell. No, Ogre, you're fine. You're in the process of building a character. You're keeping me company, so you do what you gotta do, man. It's all good. I'm just rambling on, so I tend to just talk about anything that enters into my mind when it gets to this point of the process, because this dry brushing is mindless. Disintegrate. Disintegrate is wicked. A wicked spell. I have seen it used to great effect. Funny story. About 2 years ago for my birthday, a buddy of mine put together a 5th edition Battle Royale Everybody made their own PC. He, I don't remember if he gave us a stat array or if we did a point buy, but we each came in with our own PCs. We were put into an arena, and it was a he DM'd, and it was a have at it, go at each other kind of thing. I think it was level 20 if I remember correctly. Now, one of the better things about being level 20 was fantastic. Battle Royale was great. I went with a 5th edition stock class. It was a Diviner Drow Wizard, level 20. And I had a couple of spells. I only used a few of them. I didn't go through a ton of spell slots. I used Invisibility, Greater Invisibility, because why would you not at that level? I used Summon. I forget what the actual name of the spell was, but I essentially summoned a Phantasmal Dragon, which was pretty much just as effective as a real one. Caused its damage, did its thing. And then I did a... I ended up getting rid of one of my biggest competition, really, one of the bigger competition players in that group. I ended up getting rid of him with a power word kill. Power word kill is just so wicked. Just wow, right? Just wow. I think it's if I remember correctly off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up. Power word kill. I don't think there's a save. If you're underneath 100 hit points, 99 to be exact, if you have 99 hit points or less, you are simply dead. Just dead. That's it. You're done. You're out. Power word kill. So now let everybody here in on a little secret with what I have planned. This is Tiamat that I'm painting. It is not exactly Tiamat, but it's, a dragon god that I'm painting in Tiamat's scheme. My group is going to face her sometime really soon, and it's going to be 8 of them. There's going to be 8 of them total. 8 of them total. They are coming in. There's going to be a couple of... There's 3 level 12s. I just finished dry brushing Scarlet across it just to kind of even it back out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and dry brush it again over with Crimson to kind of give it a little bit more of a reddish hue. Just so that what the Crimson didn't catch, the Scarlet didn't catch, the Crimson will, to kind of, just to give it a little bit of depth and some layers. Anyway, so they're gonna face it. There's gonna be 3 level 12s, 1 level 14, and I think 2 level 15 or 3 level 15s, or maybe it's 3 12s, 1 13, 3 12s, 1 13, and 3 14s, 4 13s. Oh, I don't bloody know. Either way, it's going to be a challenging fight for them. The way the Tyranny of Dragons is written is the encounter itself is designed for 5 level 15s, I believe, or maybe 4 level 15s. And from what I've read, 4 or 5 level 15s can still struggle against her if she's not weakened. I am going to have 8 players, so I'm a little concerned that action economy, once they get her weakened, is going to be an issue. But I am more concerned that they're not going to weaken her at all, and she's going to come out in her full CR30 form. It's going to require some quick adjustment on my part because I don't really know what to expect in terms of what's going to happen with this group. They always manage to surprise me. Some things that again, and I guess this is most D&D groups. Some things that I think are super simple, they struggle with from time to time, and some things that I think are super difficult, they pick up really, really quickly. Um, it's just the way that goes, right? Every group's different. All right, so we are just pretty much done with this at the moment. I'm just adding some red back into this blackness that I created because I did want the low lights and the shadows, but I did notice that I did go a little heavy on the dark colors, so just trying to bring some of that red sheet back out. So, she's probably the prettiest miniature I've painted in a very, very, very long time. As a matter of fact, I did do some red and threw some red back into her, so she's a little less. She's a little less of a dark fiend and a little more of a majestic queen. She's a pretty unicorn. Now, but there's still something missing, and I don't know what it is. I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. I messed up. I made a small error in judgment in my wash. I did not put black wash on her red head, which is jarring. So let me correct that. It was just slightly jarring because it was like this clean, pristine red. See, that's fine right there, but it was this clean, pristine red because it was a lot of the original Krylon red, and it's just jarring. Not super horrible, not the end of the world. But yeah, it was jarring. And since I didn't darken her head at all, and I actually went through the trouble of lightening it up, it works out a little bit better. And I'm using whatever's left on that palette to kind of blend in that white a little bit more. That white didn't quite blend in right. Again, I'm trying to get rid of that line of color, because there is a solid line of color that I would much rather not have. Alright, cool. So while that's drying, that black's done. We got the black taken care of. We've got our red taken care of. Let's see what the underneath looks like. Underneath, we need to add some stuff underneath. So here's what I'm going to do with the underneath. Underneath it all, I'm going to go. She is fire, right? All the red highlights went on the upper wing. We're going to do orange fire highlights, dry brushing for the underwing. Just give it a little bit of a two-tone. Just give it a little bit of a two-tone. Yeah, just give it a little bit of a two-tone. I know I still got red on that brush. It's not a huge issue, but I want to give it a little bit of two-tone, a little bit of a highlight. Especially along those, the spinal column under the underwings. Just something small, right? So just because we are going to go through and we are going to paint them back. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing a dry brush and trying to get some highlights to the musculature under her underwing. Let me turn it so that I can see a little bit better. But I just want to add some small highlights, nothing major, nothing fancy, just some small, so that it's lighter on the edges and where the skin should be stretched. Just give it a little bit of definition. We're just pretty much highlighting at this point. All the hard work is done. We've got our low lights in. We've got our wash in. We're going to do some basic highlighting. We're going to go over the spikes in a minute with black. Just not watered down black, just pure black. And I'm going to do the rest of them. And then I'm going to let her dry overnight. I'll give her a clear coat in the morning. But we are pretty much going to be done a little bit. It wasn't bad. A large figurine took me about 4.5, 5 hours to do from beginning to end. Most of the time was spent on the heads, as you can imagine. You know, if people are looking at the heads, that's where you want to spend a majority of your time. The rest of her body wasn't so hard, but I am going through and just giving some small highlights here and there. Going against the grain, just doing some dry brushing. Just to offset that breakage, that monotony of what I created when I went heavy on the dark. Stringing that was on the leftover from the claws that I didn't clear up right. It's okay. Alright, that wing's done. Let's turn her around. Do the other side. So, for those of you that are joining in here, if you're still with me, it is a late night print, late night stream for painting. I know that some of everyone that was in here, all 3 or 4 of you, were probably getting ready for bed, or some of you probably went to bed. If you're in the channel, drop me a follow. I'd appreciate it. And catch me the next time I'm on. I do paint a lot. I stream a lot when I'm painting. I do play video games from time to time. I know I got something planned recently with Final Fantasy VII Remake coming up. Haven't quite decided what I wanted to do with that yet. But I actually prefer to do the D&D stuff streams more than I like to do the video game streams, because whenever I'm prepping a game, I can sit here and I can talk and come up with some ideas, and you know, anything I come up with, you guys are more than free to use in your campaigns. I'm not going to throw a fit over you guys wanting to use some of my ideas. more from a DM perspective than from a player. I don't get a chance to play an awful lot. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. I enjoy DMing. I really do. I think it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of work, but it is also rewarding in its own way. I took a group of level 1s, 3 of which have never played D&D before, 2 of which have played D&D but didn't play 5e. And I took them from level 1, or rather they took themselves, I didn't take them. They took themselves from level 1 to level 14, 15, whatever they are now. I want to say they're 14. 2 years, a group of strangers. Groups are sometimes hard to find, right? Sometimes you find a group that you like and they fall apart, or they'll do a couple of sessions and then they'll stop, or people leave. Using a beholder. Ogre says, ideas like using a beholder in a room of shifting mirrors. Holy crap, that is evil. That is probably the most evil thing that I have ever heard. That's funny. That is funny. Wow. Give me a minute. I am stunned. Crazy. Wow. Wow. All right. So DM tip. Hats off to you, man. Whoever came up with that idea. If that's you, Ogre. If that's yours, Jesus Christ. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. But I do prep. I do enjoy prepping. It's amazing. These people that I'm DMing, I put out a meetup, and some people say, hey, how do you find groups? It's always hard to find a group, right? We can never find groups. Nobody's doing anything. I can't do anything. Hey, man. The way I started DMing, because like everyone else, I couldn't find a group. I found one group. They were running Pathfinder. I showed up. It was at someone's house. I showed up, and there were about 15 other players. I was there for 4 hours, and they were still shopping the entire time. Which is fine, but 12 players is a lot to manage. It is. You need some experience to get that done. Not that it's hard. Not that it can't be done. It's just it's a lot, and it's a lot of people demanding your time and attention. And if someone wants to sit there and haggle for every gold piece, then you are going to be in town for a very long time. That's just the way that's going to work. So, I opened up a meetup. I went on the meetup. I paid whatever fee. I think it was like maybe $20 or whatever. And I paid whatever fee. And I just said, hey, meet me at this restaurant, Peter Piper Pizza. I like Peter Piper Pizza. Meet me at Peter Piper. This is the game I'm planning on running, looking for people that might be interested. And shit you not, man. I shit you not. Maybe about 15, 20 people showed up. We all had some pizza. I introduced myself. I told them the game I was willing to play. Of the 20 that showed up, we'll say maybe 12 of them gave me their names, their phone numbers, their email address. Of the 12 that told me they were interested, 6 responded. And there's my group. Couldn't find one that was good enough that I enjoyed playing in, so I just made my own. And you know what? They have been here every single session. For 2 weeks, every 2 weeks we meet. Every other Saturday we meet. There have been some exceptions, holidays, Christmas. Sometimes I just can't make that week because I'm working or whatever. But we meet pretty much like clockwork. Everybody knows they're supposed to be here. I very, very, very rarely ever get the last minute, hey, I can't make it. It does happen. And you accommodate, but it's very rare, far and few between. And they enjoy the game. And that's all that I can ask for. If they're having fun, I'm having fun. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about how some things surprise me. Again, we're running Tyranny of Dragons. We are on the Rise of Tiamat, and then there is one chapter in that book called Zonthel's Tower, where I was extremely concerned that those puzzles were going to keep them stuck. I imagined that one chapter of that module taking them Two 6-hour sessions. We play 12 to 6, right? So 2 6-hour sessions is what I thought that was going to take them to get through that tower. They actually made it through that tower, or that puzzle, and that maze, and that tower with time to spare. We actually ended the game that early because I just did not, my fault, I did not prep enough, and I didn't want to throw an additional wrench because we knew we were approaching the end of the module. So we called it about an hour early, and I was very, very surprised that they were able to. Again, the tower wasn't hard, but some of those puzzles were a little convoluted, and I was extremely surprised that they were able to get it done in one 5-hour session. There have been times where it's literally taken them 3 hours to leave town, and that's with a 6-player group. Can you imagine running a 12-player group? Everybody wanting their time to negotiate. I also instituted some basic rules, easy stuff to help speed things along. Unless they were actually interested in attending a shop and looking for something specific and or haggling, then the rule was out of the player's handbook. The rule was is whatever you are selling, if it's mundane, you can sell for 50% of its value. So you have a piece of just regular studded leather. You just say, hey, I'm gonna go sell this. Okay, cool. Unless there were something plot centric, get in, get out, move on, right? Hey, I want potions of healing. All right, here's what it costs. Take it out. There you go. It did help speed the game along, so that we weren't spending so much time in the city just arguing over mundane objects. Magic items in my world are a little bit more rare because in 5e they're just more rare. A lot of DMs are... Every DM's different when it comes to handing out magic items, but in terms of world building, magic items in 5e, Forgotten Realms specifically, are more rare. So I run it as a low... Not a low magic, but they are rare. And if they want to turn around and sell those items, well, finding a buyer for that is a little bit more difficult. Well, finding a reputable buyer is a little more difficult. Some of those have created great opportunities. They drew attention to themselves in other cities, and sometimes that attention they drew on themselves didn't work out so well. They've been robbed. They've been chased out of town. They've been wanted for murder. It's just one of those things. You draw attention to yourselves, and there are consequences. That's D&D, right? Alright, I'm painting these spikes black, and the more that I get them done, the more that I think I would like to see them in that brown, but I am enjoying the black. Excuse me. So I'm going to pull out my trusty number 3. Give myself some more black. And put her down. Give myself some more black. We're on the final touches. I'm just painting her nails, painting the claws on her feet, painting the spikes on her wings, and then we are done. Again, I'm not going to bore you guys with a clear coat. You take a can of spray matte clear coat and you coat her in it, and then you're done. It doesn't seem necessary to drag out the stream another 20 minutes simply for that. You don't have to do it my way. You can take your time and manually do it if you want to. Some people will, some people won't. It's entirely up to you. Everybody has their own way of doing things. I was simply offering a guide because there wasn't one, at least that I saw, on YouTube for Tiamat. Red dragons, black dragons, green dragons, blue dragons. Tons of resources. Tiamat, I didn't see a single one. I saw a lot of unboxing. Not a single painting tutorial. And again, as you guys saw, I used a variety of paints. A lot of it's cheap acrylic paint from Hobby Lobby. Some of it is expensive paint from Vallejo, and some of it was expensive paint from Citadel. But it accomplishes the job if you do it right and take your time. You can have the most expensive paint in the world, but if you don't take your time and you're rushing through it, it's always going to look worse than you intended because you're rushing. That's why I'm taking my time with these spikes on her back, because if I were to rush it through, then I end up with that caked mess, like I did with the white dragon at the beginning when I was complaining about it just looking so caked on. Like, shit, man. I remember being in high school and the girls would cake their makeup on. I did some sports. I know I don't look like it now. Gained a few pounds at my old age, but there were, I remember the girls in high school, were out there running and their makeup is melting off their face because they just caked on all that foundation. Not attractive. Wasn't attractive then, isn't attractive now. I'm talking about the makeup thing. At my old age, high school girls are just not attractive, and that's how it should be. That is exactly how it should be. Got a little off topic there. Alright, so I'm just finishing up some of these nails. As you can see, it's taking me some time to get all of them. And I do want to make sure I do get all of them, because the last thing I want to do tomorrow when I wake up and I'm getting ready to clear coat her is, after I've cleaned up all my paints and brushes, and then turn around and find out I missed one of her nails. God bless, right? God bless. My dog is probably staring at me. Is she? Yes, she is. And she's begging me to go to bed because she's tired. And she runs the house. She's the queen. So, get these nails done. And I'm going to speed up a little bit. I'm using my number 3, which means I'm taking a little bit longer. But that's because the other brush that I was using had some stray bristles that were kind of pointing all weird out in different angles, and I didn't want to catch any of the red unintended areas with it. As I said, I didn't want to wake up tomorrow and miss one, and I just looked, and there's one right here that I completely overlooked twice. So, you almost done with that character, Ogre? What do your stats look like? I think she decided she was going to bed without me. It's probably a good thing, pup. Hard to see, it's getting a little dark in here. I don't have the luxury of natural light, so I'm trying very, very hard to use what light is available. I do have a lamp specifically for these projects, but it's going to take me longer to go fetch it and set it up than it's going to take me to finish painting these nails. So grab her by the tail. She's no longer tacky, which means she's starting to dry. Fantastic. Got her overwings done. Now time to do the underwings. Now, I didn't thin the paint. It is drying out on me. A glob of it is anyway starting to dry out on me, and that's fine. I didn't thin it down because I didn't want to overly wet it. And the reason why I didn't want to overly wet it is the last time I did that, it wasn't watery, but it took forever to dry. And I need the wings to dry because I'm going to paint the claws last, and that means I got to lay her on her back to dry overnight. The wings themselves are already dry, but I want to make sure that the nails are dry so that they're not sticking to this paper. Now, the paper that I have right here on the table, it's not fancy drop cloth paper. I didn't buy it at Hobby Lobby. It's the ads that come in your mailbox, all the useless crap that you get. And if you use the ads, great, if that's your thing. I don't. So they're my painting cloths, covers, things. So let's see. Stats are strength, dex, con. Okay. Seems pretty decent. Actually, I do have an idea. I was talking about prepping earlier. Ogre, when you get a minute, because I know you're working on your character sheet. You know, I don't know if you ever saw Lord of the Rings. So I'm assuming that you saw Lord of the Rings, and you know that one scene where Frodo, after Gandalf dies, spoiler alert, but hey, you know, it's been long enough. You know that scene after Gandalf dies to the Balrog, and Frodo and the company end up with Lady Galadriel and the Forest Elves, and she's talking to him, and he offers her the ring, and she gives that big old speech. I will be a queen, terrible as the dawn. All shall love me and despair. Rawr. Do you think it would be cheesy to lift that soundbite and cut it off to just like maybe the last part of that, and use that soundbite to introduce Tiamat when she claws her way out of the portal? Backstory always takes me a while to come up with. Do not feel bad. Backstories they're fun, but I also overthink it because I figure it's got to be level appropriate. At level 1, I can't sit there and say, oh, I was a veteran of this war and that war and stuff. I can't sit there and say, oh, well, I've known this, and that since I was a kid, and I'm 100 years old, but I'm level 1. So that to me is the hardest part about backstories. But I've been toying with the idea of downloading that soundbite from Lord of the Rings and using it as a precursor to right before Tiamat when she claws out, because that's going to be set on a timer, right? But when that happens, I hit that soundbite on my laptop or my phone or whatever, and that is going to be her introduction just before she claws out. My question to you, Ogre, is if you were sitting at that table and that happened, would you roll your eyes or would you think that was pretty cool? Because if it's cheesy, then I'm not going to do it. But I don't want to ask my group because that'll give it away. What are your thoughts on that? And we are finishing up the spikes here. I'm fortunate enough today to have some people in my channel to spend some time with as I was working on this. Thank you all for stopping by. I realize it is a long time to sit in a channel, but y'all have been great and patient and wonderful. And I appreciate the compliments on my totally amateur paint job. But so anyway, the only reason why I bring up that question was because I did just finish watching Lord of the Rings again, and I mean, for the most part, it can be adapted. I would have to cut off the beginning where she mentions the Dark Lord. But it can be adapted to serve my needs. I think it would be cool, but I don't want to kill the mood by throwing something cheesy in the middle of a tense campaign. It's a great reference. I think everybody would get it. But I want I want an outside perspective. You know what I mean? And I am going to be uploading this video or this stream to YouTube. Um, the stream itself does not have the chat of everybody in the room, so that's why I've been announcing who's been asking what from time to time. But I am going to upload this to YouTube, so those of you that are on YouTube, by the time y'all watch this, most of it'll probably, I would have already made a decision, right, one way or the other. But tell me what you think. I'd be interested to know the thoughts out there on cannibalizing popular cultural references for D&D. And I am tempted to ask these questions in a DM group that I'm a part of, various groups in Facebook that I'm a part of. The problem is that a lot of people in my group are also part of those groups on Facebook. As I discovered one day, funny story behind that, as I discovered one day that we all share the same groups. So asking it kind of gives it away. For instance, they were fighting a same campaign, Tyranny of Dragons. They were fighting Chuth, the green dragon. But I was hand creating a semi boss, a mini boss, if you will, of a two-headed alligator, and I had drawn up stats. And I had gone to this homebrew page that I'm part of, and I asked them for advice. Well, I had a number of my players that I was unaware that they were in that. I had a number of my players comment on it, and then that's when I discovered that we all shared the same Facebook groups, and I could no longer use that channel. Not that I don't take my ideas from it, but I'm also very careful as to what I post if it's something that those players are going to be involved in, right? So we've got, I wonder if this what nail polish feel like, because I am totally over painting all of these nails, and I have 2 left. I lied, I have 1 left. Oh, I only have 1 left. Okay, good, because I was getting over this. Ogre says, I think it would be appropriate if you can accommodate with some kind of rumbling effect. A rumbling effect. You know, I use tabletop audio for a lot of my sound effects. I think a rumbling or an earthquake or a ground shake could be arranged. Worst case scenario, I could simply download the sound of an earthquake or of a ground shake or something like that. Given the current layout of the terrain and how I'm going to have everything set up, I would not be able, because we're also using 3D printed terrain. It's going to be an entire set piece. I cannot, given that of the current setup, I can't initiate an actual rumbling in terms of like the table shaking without knocking a whole bunch of shit over and possibly breaking some stuff. But I can definitely look into maybe doing some, like an earthquake kind of thing, like a, yeah, I like that idea. And you're right, you know, she is a powerful deity, so to me it was just one of those things that I was thinking of. I just was hoping I was hoping to get confirmation that it wouldn't be too cheesy, and I thank you, Ogre, for justifying my whims. You have been really great tonight, in that you are allowing me to justify my inane ideas. Holy crap. I am totally over painting these nails, and funny story, she has claws. So I am not done yet. She has 5 toes, 4 feet. So 20 nails, claws, nails. So we are going to be on for probably just a little bit longer, maybe another 15-20 minutes while I get that done. These aren't nearly as big, so it won't take me nearly as long. But I do got to paint her nails. And I'm going to paint those black as well. And the reason why I'm going to go black is because I could have very well have gone brown. I should go brown. You know what? Just for uniform purposes, I am going to give them a base coat of black, and then I'm going to go over it with bone white. Right? It's always something. I'm going to go over it with, I'm going to do it in black and give it a base coat in black. And then I'm going to go over it with bone white just for uniformity because I had already painted one black. But I'm going to do it, make it the same bone color as these, as the rest of these heads and faces. Because I like the way that bone looks, and I just looked at my red dragon, the gargantuan that I painted the other day, and it had bone colored claws. So I just want to, but because I had already painted one black and I don't know how that's going to affect that bone white that I'm going to put onto it, I didn't, you know, like I made a joke earlier about, you know, girls wearing black bras with white shirts. You can see through it, and I don't know how that's going to affect the end color, and I don't want to have one nail just sticking out like a sore thumb by itself. Coincidentally enough, it was not going to be the thumb. It was going to be the middle finger. And I lied. Tiamat's feet has 6 claws. So 24, not 20. As Ogre just said, it's always something. Good news is that we are almost done. You don't have to do the black nails with the white bone white. That is me just making a mistake, and instead of making something just one thing different, I am deciding to just make them all uniform. So this is my own idiosyncrasies coming out to light right here. And yes, I am aware that it does not make sense to... I am aware that it does not make sense to paint something black and then turn around and paint it white. I get it. But that's what's happening, so... Deal. On your own miniature, you're more than welcome to bypass this step entirely. It's fine. I get it. It's not a huge deal. My laptop decided it was going to shut itself off. It's okay. I didn't have my notes going anyway. Or I didn't need my notes. Not for this part. Get these nails done. Now, in hindsight, what I would probably do is a little bit differently if I should ever do this again. and this is just me overthinking something that is by all means not a problem. But in hindsight, what I would probably do, and if I ever do paint this one miniature or something like this, maybe if I'm painting it for a friend, I'll try something different. Experiment a little bit more with. I actually played it a little safe, but if I really, really wanted to get crazy, you see, and I'll show you on the gargantuan that I painted. On that gargantuan that I painted, and I'm going to show you in a minute, that two-tone red stripe, and Dee had mentioned it earlier on the previous stream, right? Is that two-tone stripe kind of goes a long way towards breaking up some of the monotony of the actual model. But I would probably turn around and paint that stripe on its underbelly. And it can still be done, and it wouldn't take a large pain in the butt to do it, but I mean, it looks fine the way it is. Here's the black nails. As you guys can see, I mean, she looks dangerous. By all means, she looks like the dragon queen that she is, right? You got your blue head, you got your red head, your green head. I mean, she looks dangerous, right? It is not bad in any means. Even the black is fine, but I do want to add a little bit more color to that. The gargantuan that I did, and this is probably what I would do in the future with her. You see how that two-tone stripe goes down the belly? It actually goes underneath, out the back end, and up the tail. And then her claws, her bones, her claws on her feet are also that brown. So I would probably try and mimic that a little bit more moving forward. I'm actually going to turn around, and I'm not going to do them all, but I am going to do the claws in that bone color. Yes, that does mean that we are going to be up a little bit more, or rather, I'm going to be up a little bit longer. It's going to be a little bit of a bigger pain in the butt, but I think that in the long run, adding more of that bone color will actually, again, help break up some of the monotony. You can't really see her claws. They're sitting there. They're black. Great. Wonderful. Her wing spikes are black, but I want her actual feet to be bone. So, the black should already almost be dry. I'm going to start on the one claw, work my way over, and I'm going to do it in bone white. Okay? We're going to do bone white. We're going to let it down. We'll let it sit. Let it dry. Now we're going to do it in sepia. And then we're going to do a sepia shade for the bone color. We'll probably dry brush at the end of that some khaki. Same as we did with the bone previously. You can see the previous stream for that. And as you can see, I'm going through the claws with the bone white after I had already done the black. This is bone white 72034 of the Vallejo line. But I think this is going to come out a lot better than this is going to be a little bit better in terms of contrast than just the black. Like I said, you can see the black kind of bleeding out from underneath that bone white, and that's fine. That's not an issue. Because I'm going to sepia wash it anyway, which will give me that bone color that is prevalent on the rest of the on that skull plate that I have. And once I sepia wash it, then blend in with some of the red and help cover up a little bit my mistakes. But the sepia wash is a godsend. It really is. It's very well done. It's a great tool for miniature painting, particularly bones. Can put out an entire army of generic skeletons with nothing but bone white paint and sepia wash. So, Ogre's almost done with his character sheet, which is actually pretty cool. I'm glad I was able to keep him some company while he was toiling away. He mentioned something about a backstory. Backstories are great. I like to keep my backstories generic, maybe toss in a couple of names here and there, but if I keep it generic enough, then it also allows my DM to use a lot more of it. When it's ultra specific, then I find that ultra specific, as a DM, I find that ultra specific backstories can be more of a hindrance than generic ones. Only because if you leave it generic, then I can kind of just drop them in anywhere. For instance, one of my players, final session, they're gonna be here tomorrow, or they're gonna be coming in. Final session is not tomorrow. Sorry, we're gonna be playing on Saturday, and I haven't been able to work in his backstory. They haven't really been around. They come in and they probably not come in, but they join the game once every other month or so. They're kind of like guest players, guest appearances, right? So they drop by, they play, they leave. It's just one of those, whenever they can. So he gave me a backstory, and he dropped in something about his dad disappearing, but his dad's not really dead. It was really an interesting story. Backstory, very a little vague, a little generic, but I need their characters wise, in terms of contributing to the setting tomorrow. I needed to work their characters in. I worked them in when they come in, I worked them out, and I was having a hell of a time working them in and out, or working them back in after I worked them out the last time. So what I ended up doing this time around is I used his father reappearing as a hook as to why his character would be involved in this final confrontation. Because let's face it, their characters helped with a couple of other confrontations, barely survived. Aside from them being players and actually playing, their characters had no justification for being involved in this fight anymore. So I had to find a way to work them back in. And there's always a way to work someone back in and work someone out. So much so that you're just not kind of like, oh, well, they're there. The only time I struggle as a DM to work a character out, or a player that's missing, let's say a player's missing a session at the last minute. If you're mid-dungeon and you took a short rest, or you're mid-dungeon and there's a fight that you guys just finished and you guys are sitting there, that can be problematic in terms of working your character out, because you're there, right? It's not a good spot. But if you finish at a camp, or if you finish back in town, finishing in town is the easiest to work a character out, because you just, hey, they just didn't join you that day, right? And they slept in, or they went shopping, or there's so many other things that they could do in town that it's just not an issue. Middle of a dungeon is a little bit more problematic, but I almost always find a way to work. And it's the temporary work-ins, and the temporary workouts that prove to be an issue. A permanent workout, not a problem. It doesn't always have to be character death either, but working a character out permanently is easy. It's the temporary ones, the ones that only miss a session. And if they miss a session, they're in the middle of the dungeon. I'll either run the character as an NPC, or I'll ask one of the other players to do it. Some people like milestones. I like XP. Gives people an incentive, and I do XP based off of role playing. It's all equal based: role play, combat, and social interaction. And I do it that way so that players are not concerned with having to fight. If you go an entire session with roleplay, you can count that you're going to get probably the same amount of XP, if not, a similar amount as you would as a combat encounter. which forces players to think outside of the murder hobo box. You know what I mean? But Ogre, if you're still in here, if you're still paying attention, I'm sure you're working on your backstory. My rambling is probably in your ear is probably irritating you, right? Like, God, I want that guy shut up. If you're still in here, what are your thoughts about XP versus milestones? I personally enjoy doing XP a little bit more. It gives me a little bit more control over the players, where they should be in terms of level. Milestones are fantastic, and the modules themselves are built off of the milestones themselves are built, or the modules themselves are usually built off of milestones, because it's easier for them. They design an encounter. Chapter 1 is designed for four level 1s, and all of their encounters are geared towards that, so it's easy for them to keep up. Milestone, at the end of the chapter, you reach a milestone, you gain a level. So chapter 2, their encounters are designed for 4 level 2s. So I can understand definitely the appeal of milestones, but as a DM, I really do just enjoy giving out XP. Alright, we are actually almost done. I am working on the last foot of the claws that I decided to repaint in a bone color. And as you notice, I'm not paying attention to the bottom of her feet. Not because I don't care, but because she is going to get mounted onto a gargantuan-sized disc anyway. Once I'm done with it. Once I'm done with her, painting her, that you're not going to see the bottom of the feet ever. So alright, so her claws are done, and I actually do like the two-tone of the claws. It came out a little bit better. Once I shade it in the sepia, it'll look like the rest of the bone, and that actually does pretty much not interest me. I mean, obviously, if I wasn't interested in this miniature, I wouldn't be spending so much time on it. We're probably going on about 6 hours total of painting, but it is a large miniature. So I'm pulling out my sepia shade. The bone, again, the paint's drying very quickly. The bone on the first claw, by the time I get to the last claw, should be done. And I washed off my brush. And we are going to shade her nails. And that two-tone beige. Now, as a DM, I guess you can. Everyone's gonna have their own opinion. Everyone loves creating their own stuff. Wizards gives you a fantastic lineup of magic items, but nothing beats being able to come up with your own. I do a mix. In my groups, I give a mix of stuff that can readily found in any of the players' handbooks. And I have a mix that can be readily found in the player's handbooks, and I also do a lot of custom stuff. There's a lot of resources out there, a lot of free resources out there. I know that there's some Instagram pages of people who give away some stuff from here time to time of free items. They have Patreons that you can support, and I support some of them. A lot of the map makers I'll support, because I do get genuine use out of those maps. You download them on the computer, and it's good stuff right there, right? Magic items, I don't really like taking other people's magic items. Not because I don't like... I'm just weird like that. And it's basically a trust issue, and I don't want to sound, all arrogant talking about, oh, I just don't trust these people and what they're putting out there. Hey, man, everybody has their own style, their own DMing way of DMing things, but most of the time when I look at a lot of these magic items, and I'm guilty of it too. When I first started DMing, I was handing out tons of magic items, not tons, but the magic items I handed out were unbalanced. They created issues in the game. Later, and it just happens if you're not experienced, if you don't know the rule set really well, if you don't really play test any of your stuff, it can be an issue, right? So I don't like taking magic items off of these Instagram pages. It's simply because I don't know if they're balanced. And there's nothing worse than giving an item to somebody, and it happens, and I've had to do it, and it's a shitty situation. A lot of the times the players understand, hey, this item isn't working out quite the way I wanted it to. We're going to have to tone it down. Just part of, creating your own stuff and play testing it, right? But personally, I really, really, really don't like giving out these items and then having to take them back. Yeah, it's crappy, right? Hey, here's your reward for this awesome thing that you just defeated. Oh, shit, I didn't realize that was broken. Yeah, I'm going to have that back. It's just not cool. Just not cool. Also had... Ogre says also had. I wonder if I messed something up and I didn't, and he's correcting me. I don't recall. Alright. She is done. So, let me turn my laptop back on. Alright. So, for those of you who are still in here, thank you for hanging out. Ogre, good luck on your game. I saw that you followed me. Thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate it. Drop in, say hello from time to time. Oh, typo from the previous comment. Perfect. Drop in, say hello from time to time. But I'm going to show you the end result of what I have. And you guys can take what I did and experiment on your own. See if it works for you. I think she came out great. The white's a little off-putting because everything else is dark. But it's not horrible. So there she is in all her glory. You got the red where she just kind of fires, where the red and the black kind of sinks in. There are her claws painted in the brown. Yeah. And let me see if I can get a little bit closer. Stand up so you guys can get a little bit of a close-up. A little bit of a close-up of her 5 heads. Come down a little bit. It's just a weird angle, right? And just to give you guys an idea of why it did take so long to paint this particular miniature, let me go grab a ruler so you can see the actual dimensions of her, because she is not tiny or small by any means. I will be right back. Alright, so right off the top of my head, I don't know where all my rulers are. I know I had them, but I do have this paper cutter which has a ruler on it. So inches wise, wingspan. Her wingspan is from end to end. That is 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17. She's got a 17-inch wingspan from end to end. She sits at about 4.5 inches. No, I take it back. She sits at 3.5 inches tall, 17 inches wide, and I'd call it from the furthest point of the head sticking out to the wing, 8 inches deep. That, my friends, is an extremely large miniature. And we just painted her. Tonight. So, Ogre, if I don't see you again, good luck with your game. If you do pop on from time to time, say hello. And hey guys, thanks for joining me. And whatever you do, whatever you choose to do, do it well. Have a good night, y'all.